So today I'm going to be showing you the third shelf on my bookshelf tour. This one is mostly young adult and fantasy. It is this shelf here. So let's get started. So, the first book that I have on this shelf is by Eva Ibbotson, and it is called The Secret Countess. The story of a young girl who is a countess and she lives with her family, but suddenly their family comes under threat and their country comes under threat, so she has to move and she has to hide her identity. But of course she goes to a rich household in London and she actually ends up falling in love with the Earl who is there. It's a pretty standard story and not all that eventful, but it's a decent read if you're a kid, so if you like that sort of thing, then go for it. Next, I have Even Naughtier Stories, which are by Barbara Ireson. This is actually one of my mum's books, and it's illustrated by Tony Ross. It's just a really fun kids read about, like, naughty children and things that they get up to, so it's a good one for kids. Next, I have a series, which is the Jiggy McHugh series, and this is by Michael Lawrence. Me and my sister, when we were young, we used to love these books because they're filled with jokes and hilarious things that children do. It's basically a lot of good fun, quirky stories, and I would highly recommend this series if you just want to have a good fun series to read and laugh at. Next, I have The Carbon Diaries 2015 by Sachi Lloyd. This is a futuristic world where carbon has started to run out, and so carbon is rationed. Everyone in the world has rations of carbon, and it's basically the story of how to deal with the cutbacks that the people keep on having because of the lack of carbon. So it's an interesting kind of dystopian read. I didn't particularly enjoy it, but a lot of my friends really loved it, so I would say if you're into dystopian, then definitely give it a try. Next, I have another series, which is The Declaration, The Resistance and The Legacy, all by Gemma Malley. It's a world where many children live in this orphanage and they are told very strict rules and they have to live by a very strict code of conduct, and eventually one boy comes into the orphanage and he tells the people in there, all the kids, about the world outside and about how it's completely different to what they have been told about it. And he convinces them to try and escape. And I just think that the covers, the first two, are beautiful. The last one doesn't entirely fit, but anyway, I think they're really pretty covers. But the book themselves are decent reads, and I did enjoy the first two a lot, the third one not as much. The next one is called Infinite Days, and it's by Rebecca Maisel. This one is actually the story of a vampire who falls in love, and it's a good read. I think it's a standalone book as far as I know. I read it quite a long time ago, a couple of years, and I got it as a gift from my friend. I think that the cover is really interesting because it's made out of tracing paper kind of material, and it's printed onto tracing paper, and then behind that is actually the image of the girl, which is printed onto the book. So for me that's a really interesting touch, which definitely makes the book more appealing. Next I have Stephanie Meyer books. I have The Host, which is the story of an alien who invades people's brains, and the alien species is coming down to Earth and they invade people's brains. It's recently been made into a film. The film is quite good, and the story is definitely, in my opinion, better than Twilight. There was meant to be a second one, but goodness knows if that's ever going to come out. And then, obviously, next to that, I have the Twilight series, which includes Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn. I read these such a long time ago, but essentially they are the story of vampires, werewolves, and humans mixing together, if you didn't already know. And they have all been made into films as well. I do not like the films one little bit, but I think that the books were definitely good reads when I was in about year 7, so probably 12 or 13 years old. I would say that if you are into the sort of paranormal, superhuman type of thing, then definitely give them a go. Even though there's so much hype around them, they're still good reads, and I enjoyed them when I read them. I just don't enjoy the films. So up next we have The Express Diaries, which is by Nick Marsh. I won this on a Goodreads giveaway. It sort of starts off a bit like they're all going on a train journey and it's going to be all exciting, but suddenly there's a lot of deaths and then all sorts of paranormal things come into it, and it's actually an adult fiction book. And I would definitely say if you're interested in the Orient Express and things like that, where you have to investigate murders and things, then definitely give this a go. But it's also, be warned, including a lot of paranormal stuff and fantasy stuff that I just didn't expect, but definitely made it a more interesting read overall. Up next I have Jill Murphy's The Worst Witch at Sea and The Worst Witch Strikes Again. This was a series that when I was younger I really loved it. I had some of them on tape, so I used to listen to them when I went to bed, and it was just this hilarious witch who always managed to get everything wrong at the school that she went to, and she was just a really funny one. She's called Mildred Hubble, and it was just a hilarious story every time I read them. So definitely, if you're a kid, give these a go. These are really good. I highly enjoyed them. I listened to them multiple times on tape and read through the books multiple times. As you can see, they're a little bit battered, so definitely I would recommend these. So up next I have Lirael by Garth Nix. Now this is actually the second one in a series. The first one is Sabriel, and I did get the first one from the library, but I should actually have a collection of all of them. I don't know where that has gone. Basically, I have the Abhorsen Chronicles, which is the name of the third one, and then Chronicles is obviously the collection of the 3. It's a story of someone who can travel into the world of death, and they can retrieve people from the world of death and other things such as that. And it's just a really exciting read for middle grade readers. Definitely I would recommend any one of these in the series. So up next we have the Philip Pullman His Dark Materials series, which includes Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. As you can see, my Northern Lights is different to the other 2, which is a bit of a shame because I lent my Northern Lights to someone and I never got it back, so I had to buy a new copy and I couldn't find the box set edition anywhere, so I just had to get a different cover copy. As a whole, the series itself is fantastic, and I would highly recommend this to anyone who loves fantasy, because this is a classic fantasy series and I really enjoyed it. It's basically set in a world where people have demons, and those demons are like quite similar to a spirit animal or something like that, who they are attached to their masters and they help their masters. It's focused around the story of Lyra, and Lyra is a young girl who has to travel around the world and do all sorts of exciting things with her little demon Pan. And it's a lovely, really heartwarming tale, and I would highly recommend it. The middle one is called Lyra's Oxford. This is just a sort of expansion on the series, and it's a little bit more about Oxford, which is where Lyra comes from, and the differences between Lyra's Oxford and the Oxford that we know today. And then there's also The Tiger in the Well, which is by Philip Pullman as well, and this is part of a different series. This is part of the Sally Lockhart series, who is an investigator of all sorts of different things, and this one's a good series as well. So I would just recommend anything by Philip Pullman. I have read the other ones in the Sally Lockhart series, but I got them from the library, so I don't have them all here with me. Next, I have the After School Club series by Helena Pilachatti, which is starring Sammy. This one is a young kids series, which is basically teaches you morals, but in a fun way. It's the story of a girl who becomes a big fat liar, but whose pants don't catch fire. So it's basically really short, and it's just part of a series of books which I read when I was really young, and I don't know why I've still got it on my bookshelf really, but I thought I would show you it anyway. So up next I have the Song of Ice and Fire series, excluding the first one, which I lent to my friend and have never got back, so that is a bit of a shame. I will need to rebuy that. The second one is A Clash of Kings. The third one consists of A Storm of Swords, Steel and Snow, and A Storm of Swords, Blood and Gold. They are one book but had been split into two by the publisher. The fourth one is A Feast for Crows, and the fifth one is A Dance with Dragons. All of them are by George R.R. Martin. He is an amazing, amazing writer. The series has just been made into a TV show. It's up to season 4, I believe, and it is amazing to read, and it's a really good TV show as well. So I would 100% recommend these books. They are stunning, stunning writing, and I know that they are massive books, but to be honest, they're worth it, because the detail and the intimacy that you get with the characters and with the plot and the story is just phenomenal. And I would say that everyone who loves fantasy, you 300% need to read this. Okay, so up next we have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I read this book last month in November, and I really, really loved it. I thought it was amazing. It's a fantasy read, but it kind of differs from the general mould of fantasy, because it's not about fighting and battles and wars, which George R.R. Martin is. It's more of a character exploration, and the main character in it, Kavoth, his story is told from his point of view as if he is telling it to a chronicler, and he is describing the events of his life. And it's just so in-depth and so beautifully written. It blew me away, and some parts of it were just astonishing, other parts were really brutal, and other parts were just beautifully written. So I would say that this takes you on a complete and utter journey. And if you haven't read it and you are an avid fantasy fan, then you 100% need to get around to this, because, again, it's a big book, but it's 100% worth it. And I will definitely be reading the next one as soon as I possibly can, because I do own it. I have done a review of this on my channel, so if you want to look that up, you can. And definitely, once again, pick this up. Right, up next we have The Hobbit, which is by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this, of course, is a classic fantasy read. I had not read this before this year, but after seeing the first one of the films, I thought, I should probably get around to reading this, because the film was really, really good. The second film is out, so you should 100% read this if you like the films, because the films stick fairly close to the book, and if you like the films, then you will definitely enjoy the book. Next, I have the first 4 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. This, again, is a very classic fantasy. This is an epic fantasy series. It's, I believe, 14 books long now, and it actually stretched on so long that Robert Jordan didn't even have the time to finish it before he died, and Brandon Sanderson, one of my absolute favourite authors, ended up finishing the series for him. It's set in a massive world where there are all sorts of things happening at any one time, and it's told from a variety of points of view. The main character is Randall Thor, and then there are 2 others, Matt, and there are things called Aes Sedai. They are basically witches who live in the kingdom, and then there are other things such as Bad, Darkness, and Shadow, which Randall Thor and his 2 friends have to try to defeat many times over. It's a very intense story. It goes through ups and downs. It's got moments which are really, really long of them travelling and sort of just scene setting, and then other moments which are really action-packed and really inventive and exciting. So I would say that if you're going to read this series, be ready for a big commitment, because it is a hell of a lot of books, a hell of a lot of words to get through, and it's worth it, but it takes a long time, so beware. So up next we have the Percy Jackson series, books 1 to 3, which is The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, and The Titan's Curse. These are by Rick Riordan. These have massive amounts of hype about them on BookTube, and they deserve it, because they are really fun reads about a boy who is the son of a god, and some other kids who are also sons of gods and daughters of gods, and it's all about the adventures that they get up to on Earth on behalf of their fathers and mothers. Up next I have the first 3 in the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson. This includes The Angel Experiment, School's Out Forever, and Saving the World and Other Extreme Sports. This is a series about some kids who get experimented on when they are young, and therefore they have different powers and abilities. And it's about them trying to escape notice from the general population so that they don't get turned into experiments again. And it's a really fun, really quirky series. I really enjoyed it when I was a kid, so I would definitely recommend these. And then I also have Maximum Ride The Final Warning, which is the last one in that series. And then there is a Maximum Ride thriller, which is called Max. This is kind of like an extension series of that first one, and it just goes into a lot more detail about the characters in the first series. I haven't really managed to get into that one so much, and I don't like the covers anywhere near as much. But the first series, the Maximum Ride series, I would definitely say you should read them. And then finally on this shelf I have Divergent, Insurgent and Allegiant, which are the 3 books in Veronica Roth's Divergent trilogy. These books are really good. I just finished the last one in the series. I loved the first 2 in the series. I thought that they were stunning, and it's set in a dystopian world which is divided up into factions. There is Amity, which is all about peace. There is Candor, which is all about speaking the truth. There is Erudite, which is all about having knowledge and gathering as much knowledge as you can. There is Abnegation, which is all about... And then there is also Dauntless. And the characters in this book are really interesting characters. They go through a lot of hardships to get to where they end up in the last one. And it's just a really wonderful read. I would definitely compare it to the same league as Hunger Games, and I would highly recommend it if you like the Hunger Games and other books similar to that. So that was the 3rd shelf on my bookshelf tour. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope that maybe you have found some good book recommendations from it. And thank you guys for watching, and I shall see you guys again soon. Bye!